Business owners absolutely deserve the wealth they have. Since capitalism became the de facto economic system, poverty has drastically diminished in every society that embraced some sort of free market. To them, like, no, the government has to do something. No, the government doesn't have to do anything. Although altruism, in my opinion, doesn't exist. I call it self-interest disguised to atone your sins.
Well, you're being harsh on that one. I mean, welcome to the Magatte Wade Show. Today, we have the honor of hosting Germinal G, an award-winning author, economist, and political scientist. Germinal has written extensively on topics such as economic theory, income inequality, and the history of capitalism. His work delves into the dynamics of free market economics as well as classical liberalism. With over 24 books, Germinal's insights have significantly contributed to discussions on economic policies as well as societal progress. Today, we'll explore his perspectives on economic freedom, income inequality, and even get his take on the upcoming US elections. Germinal, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Magatte, for having me. It's a true honor.
Very happy to have you. So, Germinal, let's get started. I wanted for you to provide us an introduction into your work. I would love for you to start by sharing a bit about your background and also what exactly inspired you to focus on your research on writing on political economy and also economic history.
Sure. So, first and foremost, I was born and raised in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. I'm a French speaker. I learned English in Kenya, Nairobi, where I went to French school for 4 years. And then I pursued my secondary education back in Abidjan, where I graduated with a baccalaureate in classical studies. Because I think, Magatte, I'm sure you know, in the French system, we have majors in high school. And after graduating from high school, I moved straight to the United States, where I studied political science and a minor in philosophy. As a matter of fact, I never took a single class of economics in my life before diving into economics. No, never. I was full into political science. My goal at first was, when I was 18, I was like, I want to do politics. I want to run for president of Côte d'Ivoire. That's the reason why I came here, to study politics and then go back to Ivory Coast and then run for office. But life gets in the way, things change, and your mindset, you start to discover things that you probably ignored back in the days. That's what happened to me, especially my strong belief in property rights and in liberalism. And that's how I realized that maybe I would be better off staying here. And then I got my master's in political management from George Washington University. And then after that, I started writing books because I knew that I had a skill in writing. I started writing since I was 15 or 16, but I never finished whatever I started. And my mom used to always give me a hard time for it. She always said, "Yo, you never finish what you start," and it's a real pet peeve of hers. She could not stand people who do not complete their task. And that's how I became obsessed with completion. I was like, I have to finish this. And when I published my first book, after that, it became a routine. And at first, my writings were more political. And then I started diving into economics after reading Thomas Sowell, Milton Fridman, Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich Hayek, all the free market scholars. And that's when I started to specialize myself more in technical economics and economic theory. And then naturally, with my background in political science, I dove into political economy, and then I stick to that.
Wow. It's kind of interesting. I actually never knew that you were interested in running for office. Are you still?
Oh yeah, Are you still? My God, I swear, I believe I was groomed for it. I mean, I'm a good public speaker. I can speak in front of crowds and stuff. I was absolutely convinced that if I ran, I would have been elected. But it's just the mindset. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into that at some point in the interview. But
yes,
the way I think and the way Africans think, I knew we would have butt-headed, and it would have not, yeah, it would have been difficult.
Oh, the way they are now, but hopefully things are going to change. I mean, I'm seeing pockets of people and more Africans who are totally understanding where we're coming from and where we're going. So it's encouraging. It's still not as many as we would like to, but it's encouraging. So, Germinal, uh, in terms of understanding income inequality, so often I hear Africans, they seem to be so obsessed with this concept of income inequality. For them, income inequality is a bad thing. And I'm sure when they're going to hear us, when they hear me say this just right now, me saying that, how could you think that income inequality is a bad thing? They'll be like, huh? What do you think? What are you talking about? So, help people understand, what is income inequality, and is it such a bad thing? Is it such a bad sign?
Right. So let me start by saying this, Magatte. Karl Marx, if there's one thing he was very successful at, is to make people believe that inequality is a moral issue. And that's where people take issue with, is that because things are not equal, because we're not equal, therefore it's bad. When you live in a market economy, inequality must happen. It should happen. It is a beautiful thing. I know people would probably shoot me for that, but inequality is absolutely beautiful. And the reason why inequality exists in a market economy is because we allocate our resources according to our choices, preferences, and values. You and I, we can have the exact same amount of money. We will not have the same outcome, because the money you will have, you will make certain decisions that will enable you to reach the outcome that you desire. And same for me. So we can give you 50,000 today, and then you're going to double or triple that money to 150,000. And then they give me 50,000, and then I lose. I get 40,000 back. What has happened? We're not equal, although we started at the same level. So it's all about the fact that we make decisions based on the resources we have. And that's the thing that people don't that's the thing that either they don't understand or they refuse to accept it. Moreover, inequality in industrialized societies, so societies that believe in the individual, that place the individual above the group, have a high degree of inequality. Societies that put the group above the individual have a high degree of poverty. That's one of the reasons why Latin American culture, African culture, Southeast Asian cultures, they have a high degree of collectivism. That's why poverty is more prominent in those regions than in the West. In the West, inequality doesn't mean that some are rich and some are poor. It's just that people are not rich at the same time and at the same level. The proof is, during the Gilded Age, in between 1870 and 1900 in the United States, the American working class had wages that were 3 times higher than Western Europe. The French, the Germans, the British, they had wages, especially the working class of those countries, have their wages that were 3 times lower than the American working class. So the American working class, although they were working in difficult conditions, we're not going to deny that, they had a higher living standard than if they were in Europe. And that's why you saw many Europeans during that period moving to America. So inequality is not a bad thing. It's just that people are not rich at the same time. But the
Yeah.
standard of living of everyone is increasing simultaneously. But they just don't have the same resources, they don't have the same capital. So I rather live in a society where they have a high degree of inequality than a high degree of poverty. Because when there's more poverty, when you're sort of successful in a collectivist culture, those around you try to pull you back. They try to pull you down. They're like, why is this guy doing better than I do?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
No.
I've never
Yeah.
understood that. And that's, to me, it's one of the reasons that is holding back a lot of Africans. But I can
Yeah.
dive into it a little later.
No, no, I mean, it's a very good point that you're making. So I know that usually the way I try to explain um, income inequality to people, because, like you said, they think it's a bad thing. But I try to, I want to tell people, take the artist example. It's almost like, think about, you have 4 children, and in a way, you're offering them all the same thing. You're getting them all the same, you're ideally you're offering them all the same opportunities to pretty much be whatever they want, right? And
Mhm.
they're part of a family, so the family is that collective thing. But each of them, you would like to recognize what makes them unique. That each of them is unique, right?
Mhm.
And so imagine now in this family, because dad is a banker and mom is a doctor, and they decide everybody has to be a bank. All of you kids are going to have to be a banker. That's what that's what equality, in this equality of outcome. Because when we talk about inequality, income inequality, it's almost as people are thinking that we should have equal income on the end, which
Mhm.
I call, equal outcome, right?
Yes.
So imagine now if your parents said, I don't care, all four of you kids are going to have to be bankers. And imagine if there's one of these kids, I don't care about being a banker. I don't want to be a freaking banker. Leave me alone. Yeah, I want to be an artist. I want to be an artist. And then the other kid is like, I want to be a nurse. I want to be a nurse. And everyone is like, I want to be a teacher. And everyone is like, you know what? I just want to go and be a monk somewhere in the mountains of Nepal. Now, you tell me, ideally, if each one of these kids could come out and end up what they wanted to be, do you see equal outcome over there? Do you see that each one of them is the banker that the parent wanted them to be? No. And would you have wanted all of them to be bankers? No. In this situation, you're happy that the fact actually that each one of them was able to end where they wanted to end means it worked. And so it's this type. So all it is, when you see people having different type of income, it's just that people have been able to. It means that people were able to pursue different routes. But
And
anyway, so
on top of that, what I want to add is that what people don't realize is that income is the result of value creation. People act as if income exists in a vacuum. It's like it's a big pie that we have to cut into slices and then give it to everyone. No, income is the result of value creation. You are paid because you are creating value. You're bringing value either to the organization you're working for or you're bringing directly value to the marketplace. So that's why business owners are the wealthiest people in society because they're bringing value directly to the marketplace compared to a full-time employee who brings value to the corporation he's working for. And there is a level of risk between the two. That's why the full-time employee will never have the wealth of the business owner. Because at first, when the business owner starts the business, he's taking on the risk. The employee is even paid and richer than the business owner until the business start generating enough money so that the owner can start affording paying himself. And that's
that's
the
right.
part that people do not realize about entrepreneurship. And
Yeah,
that's why business owners absolutely deserve the wealth they have. It takes
that's
a
right.
lot
So
to run a business. It's a lot of risk. You are open to lawsuits. I own a business, you own a business. We both know what we're talking about. It is difficult.
yeah,
So business owners deserve where they are. And the Marxist philosophy of no, wealth is created through labor, this is nonsense. Wealth is created through assets. You have to own assets if you want to be wealthy. It's that simple. And that's why inequality will always exist. It should exist, and it's a beautiful thing. Like we inequality, in fact, highlights your individuality.
yeah.
You
It
are
just
who
it
you
just
are
says that,
for
yeah,
a reason. And
exactly.
people need to be proud of their individual abilities. Even in the Jackson family, for example, Michael Jackson was the one who shined the most because
That's right.
he was the most talented. He deserved the money, the wealth, the fame he had.
That's right.
And
That's right.
that's
That's
and
right.
that's the Jackson family is a good example of how inequality works.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's just inequality of outcome is which is, I think, if we could just remove the word inequality out of it, because I think that word is what puts a morality into it and
Yeah.
misleads people. If we could just switch inequality of outcome with, you know, with difference in outcome, I think it would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Because in this case, it just shows that it is working, that people are actually being able to pursue what they care about. And some
Yeah.
people care about things that are not going to going to bring in money, or bringing very little money, compared to others who flat out tell you, I want to make money, or they
Mhm.
pursue, or maybe when they pursue the careers that they love, software or things like that, naturally is attached to money. And it's just showing that difference in outcome. The difference in outcome for people is just, to me, a sign that we are letting people be who they want to be and pursue their interest. The Magatte Wade Show is brought to you by Skinny Skin. Skinny Skin is a premium assortment of skin and lip therapy products manufactured with natural ingredients originated in Africa. I founded Skinny Skin in an effort to create jobs, prosperity, and provide a greater sense of dignity for my beloved Senegal. Skinny Skin is an African product made in Africa by Africans, bringing money and capital into African economies through value creation. Purchasing African products made in Africa by Africans is what Africa needs to thrive. Visit skinnyskin.com and discover our products. Germinal, you wrote a lot about economic freedom as well, and growth, and especially your two books, for Role of Free Markets and Capitalism's Efficiency. So tell us more there. Like, how have you come to understand, and how is it that capitalism, in your mind, seems to be a superior system? I think that's what you think. If it's not, tell me otherwise. But if that's what you think, explain how and why
Sure.
you think that.
So there are overwhelming empirical evidence showing since capitalism became the the de facto economic system, poverty has drastically diminished in every society that embraced some sort of free market policies.
Mhm, mhm.
Because the answer is simple. When you let people pursue their incentives, they're going to perform.
That's right.
The less regulations you put in place, you tell people you have the right to do XYZ, people will maximize their utility. Capitalism became the dominant system after the Industrial Revolution. And that's why England became such a wealthy country. Because the wealth of a nation is based on the goods and services being produced over a period of time. And the Industrial Revolution gave the opportunity from people to move from an agricultural, rural society to a more industrialized, more advanced, more mechanical society. And as a result, that's why in the case of the United States, you have the robber barons like John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, who became extremely wealthy because they understood that capitalism is a system that allows you to pursue your incentive. When you live in a system when a bunch of people who are fallible people like you and I make decisions for the rest of us, guess what happens? It doesn't work because you're trying to control what is natural. What is natural is that synergy between buyers and sellers. And socialism is trying to control the outcome. No,
Mhm.
you don't control the outcome. What you try to control is your actions. You don't control how people react. You don't control how people act or whatever. You control your actions. So what capitalism does is that when you focus on your actions and when your incentives match the other person's incentives, what we have is an exchange of property rights. And that's what creates wealth. That's what creates prosperity in a society like capitalism. In socialism, everyone has tried socialism. It never works. It will never work, no matter how many times it was tried. It will always lead to the same thing.
That's
Cuba,
right.
Tanzania, the Soviet
Venezuela.
Union, everywhere it was tried, it doesn't work because you're preventing people from pursuing their self-interest. We are fundamentally self-interest beings, and you force us to be altruistic. Although
Mhm,
altruism, in my
mhm,
opinion,
mhm.
doesn't exist. Altruism, I call it self-interest disguised to atone your sins. That's how I put it.
Well,
It's
you're being harsh on that one. I mean, you're being
I
harsh
know
on
I
that
can
one.
be
I would think this is why I'm going to push back on you, Germinal, because I do believe that as one. No, but seriously, because I feel, at least for me on my end, I do definitely believe that humans, especially at a certain level of the Maslow pyramid, you're pursuing purpose and meaning, and I actually
Yes.
believe that you don't have to be so high up in the Maslow pyramid. I do believe that most of us, at least at our happiest, is when we have a sense of purpose and meaning, and that
Mm,
purpose and meaning, in a way, by definition, at least for me, rarely is about you. It's
mm,
when you get to that level of purpose and meaning, it's about something bigger than yourself. Now, you can argue and say, hey, if that's what makes you happy, it's still selfish. It's about you. It makes you
mhm.
happy to care about X or to care about this. So perhaps some people can bicker that way, but I wouldn't say that human beings are not altruistic. To me, it's just like I just don't agree with people being forced to do something, and being forced artificially. Now, some people might say, "Oh, but doesn't faith force you to artificially be altruistic? Think about your neighbor." And I'm like, well, if the doctrines of the faith you have, it's in there, why not? Again, I really, but I usually push back on that altruistic part. But I see what you mean, though, because it could be very tangled. What is it that makes you happy? What makes your world go round? If helping others is what helps makes you happy, then you can
Yeah.
say, yeah, we're back
Yeah.
to you.
So
You went back to you and your selfish, goals of being happy yourself.
yeah.
I,
So
I
in
get
fact,
I get it.
in fact, what I was trying to say is like maybe I went a little hard, but the basis of my point was that everything we do at the end of the day fulfills our self interest. So if your self interest is to help others, if helping other people makes you happy, that fulfills your self interest. There's a difference between self interest and selfishness. Self
Very
interest
different.
is pursuing a goal
Yes.
that
Yes.
doesn't hurt anyone. It's just
But
you that it satisfies. Selfishness is pursuing that same goal at the expense of other
yeah,
people. That's where it
exactly.
becomes problematic. So
Exactly.
helping someone, so someone who loves to help others, no problem. Like if helping other people makes you happy, that's your self-interest that you're fulfilling. So that's why I meant by altruism at the end of the day, like pure altruism, like being completely selfless. I have a hard time buying it.
No, and I don't think anybody would. It just, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that part. So I'm glad we got to clarify that part.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
Now moving on to the policies, like, and let's get closer here to the U.S. So in the name of reducing income inequality, many are pushing for certain policies. What are some of the craziest policies that you have seen put in place in the name of reducing income inequality? And on the contrary, what are some of the best policies you have seen happen to address that income inequality? But in a situation like that, I would call it to address, perhaps, let's just leave the question to that. What are the worst policies you've seen in the name of income inequality reduction, and what are some of the ones that you have seen provide people more access to opportunities that doesn't squelch? Um,
Sure. So usually in every society, in every government, they are they usually have two to three types of policies they implement to quote unquote reduce income inequality, but it always lead to the opposite effect. The first one is the progressive income tax. That is tried everywhere. It always lead to the same results. The rich have enough resources to not pay taxes. They have the best accountants to figure out the loopholes of the tax system, and then they don't pay any taxes. If worse comes to worse, they literally put their money into tax exempt securities where they don't have to pay taxes. So the tax burden always end up falling on the middle class because the middle class is the one that pays the most taxes of every social class in society. Business owners and very wealthy individual pays the least taxes in general because in a market economy, that's the only part where government actually incentivizes business owners. That's why when it's tax season, business owners have the ability to basically deduct a lot of things that full-time employees cannot do. So when we talk about the middle class, it's mainly full-time employees. And so the progressive income tax is that false promise of redistributing wealth from taking from the rich and give it to the poor, and it doesn't work because, as I said, the rich always find a way to not pay taxes, and they're right to do that because they took the risk. It's fair that they don't pay any taxes on that. It doesn't make sense, and then and they try to take that money to build welfare programs and so on, which even make people more dependent on the government. So that's number one. Number two, nationalization. Nationalization is another way to quote unquote reduce income inequality or to redistribute wealth equitably. Nationalization only benefits one, not one person, but one entity, is the government. Because the government is the one making up the rules on how the transfer is going to be made. So by the time, so when they nationalize, people who are running the government are the ones that are depleting the resources. And they make even those industry that they nationalize far less efficient than they were when they were in the private sector. Let me give you an example. Look at Nigeria and the oil industry. The oil industry has been nationalized since Nigeria became an independent country. The Nigerian government never bothered to try to transform the Nigerian oil into consumable products. And the Nigerian oil industry has been one of the most inefficient industries in the world because it was run by government. The money that the Nigerian government makes, the Nigerian people do not even see a penny of it. Everything goes through everything goes through and stays with government officials, and that's why Aliko Dangote decided to um, to create a refinery right in Nigeria to say, okay, if we actually transform our oil, it will be better for our people because we don't have to export it and then buy that same oil again at 3 or 4 times the price. So it will be cheaper for us and for our people to benefit from the oil that we're going to be refining. And then, of course, Bola Tinubu started giving him trouble because he wanted to refine the oil on domestic soil. So nationalization doesn't work. It only inflates the wealth of government bureaucrats. I don't know, Magatte, if you heard about this, but I was checking Stalin's net worth, and Stalin's net worth was $7 trillion. Where did he get that money? Because when he was the leader of the Soviet Union, the entire economy was nationalized, right? Nothing was owned, like there was no private ownership of the means of production. Everything belonged to the Russian government. Where this man got those $7 trillion? That's why nationalization doesn't work. African countries love to nationalize, and it it bothers me so much when they don't get that. Nationalization only depletes resources and make people even poorer.
But on that one, Germinal, it's one thing that the leaders and people like to put corrupt in front of them. Corrupt leaders would want to go for nationalization because of what you just explained.
Mhm.
We know who benefits from nationalization. The guy who is the leader, the one who is in charge of all of it. He
Right,
puts everything in his pocket. So,
right.
from this standpoint, I understand why nationalization is a good thing, right? Yeah, if he's somebody who doesn't want to work for his people, nationalism, I'm here for my pockets, mine and my families and my friends. So then
Right,
I get it. Then I get it. But why do you think that the ordinary African person who stands to be the first one to be looted, why do you think we see them day in, day out? Yeah, we need to nationalize everything. Do this. Privatization is terrible, is evil. I see it on everywhere. Facebook,
right,
the few times I go there, Twitter, everything. The instinct, it seems like the instinct of so many ordinary Africans is to go for nationalization.
yeah.
Why do you think that is? Do you think because there is a poverty in history, in economic history, meaning like we just don't understand economics? What do you think is going on? Or do you think
I,
it's just
I think, my God, it's okay. Let me put it this way. I think Africans see government as an entity completely detached from them, that superior entity that can solve everyone's problems. It's a philosophy that was developed since the independence in African culture, unfortunately, compared to Western culture, where they say, no, government actually doesn't produce anything. Like, we, the individuals, are the one who put our hard work, our labor, our skills to work and creating value at large. Africans, we never thought like that. We always thought that the government is here to solve your problems. And the part that Africans completely forget is that the people running the government are human beings like you and I, who are fallible beings who do not know any better. And that's where the real issue is. And we are, with Africans, like, we really need, the work that needs to be done is really deep. It's a real psychological work that has to be done on. It's true, because it's so hard to make people understand what's so basic, what's so common sense. They to them, like, no, the government has to do something. No, the government doesn't have to do anything. The government only needs an army to protect you from domestic and foreign attacks. That's it. The government is here to establish some laws that will enable you to have access to resources, not preventing you. That's why we talk about limited government. And people don't understand that. That's why, by essence, government should be limited. Because government's coercion, people don't understand the nature of political power. I study political science. Political power, by essence, it's a negative power because it doesn't create any value. It punishes, it is coercive, it focuses on things you cannot do. If you think about it, everything government does is what? Implement regulations. Regulations is about things you are not allowed to do.
to do? To do.
That's why
But
that,
sometimes, yeah. Go ahead, Germinal.
yeah, so sorry. So that's what regulation is about. And people completely forget that. Government cannot do anything else except creating money. But creating money is not wealth. You put money in
Yes.
people's hand, you create inflation. So
Yeah.
government creates money and creates regulation. And regulation do not create value. They only focus on what people are not allowed to do. So the only way in society where wealth is created, where prosperity is created, is in the private sector. The least punitive laws you put in place, the better off people are.
That's very
Simple as
true.
that.
And very true. And to go back to a couple things that you said, when you said that mindset that Africans have learned of government is there to, it's basically the nanny state, the nanny state. I mean, in Senegal, it kills me when I hear them say, oh, the president is the father of all of us. It's the father of a nation. No, you're not the father of a nation. We are asking you right now to manage our public affairs, but you are not certainly not the father of nothing. And but when you were saying that that mentality and that mindset of expecting everything to come from the government, um you saying that mentality came from the since our independences,
Mhm.
that I think is important to push even further, because yes, that mentality came with it, and that's what I say, we inherited socialism, the socialist
Yeah,
mindset. But we have to push back. We have to push back in terms of the times we're looking at. We need to go back to pre-colonial times, to traditional Africans, to indigenous Africans. What were they doing? Our ancestors from back in those days did not think this way. As a matter of fact, the work of George Ayite proves everything to be the opposite. And
exactly.
many other works like that will tell you that it's the colonized African who has this belief that the state is there to do everything for them.
Exactly.
But our forefathers did not think this way. They were
No,
very much free markets. Nobody told them what to do. They waited for no one to get anything done. Even the chief. The chief even did not have the power that people think they had on subjects. So that's number one. So to me, this mindset that so many Africans today have is foreign. to what our forefathers and foremothers were. So that's number one.
Absolutely.
And number two, when you were talking about, also this mindset, wanting always of a government to do everything for you. This is where, and you were talking about regulations. The Germinal, you'll be surprised how many Africans think regulation is a good thing. How many Africans do you have telling you, well, it's only normal, the state government has to put the rules because without rules, people are animals. Really? And my attitude towards that had to do with, somebody said this to me. Eli Steele, who I had on my show also, he said to me, because we see some of the same patterns with African Americans here in America. And he said, the problem with many blacks who speak like that, who behave like that, is I think perhaps we have never learned to be free. We have
Thank you.
forgotten what it is to truly be free.
Thank you.
Because if you don't believe in your own self, in your own self of restraint, meaning your own civilization, you being a civilized person, that literally you put Magatte and Germinal Van together. If you don't trust that we have enough, we're civilized enough, and that we have higher purpose enough, that we're just not going to take a knife and stab each other to death. I mean, and that you have to have your rules of saying, don't kill for me not to kill you, then it's something much more profound.
Yeah.
And when Eli said that, it really, I never thought about it, but it made sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the today we say we're so-called free from colonization. Some will argue that neocolonization is still there, but that's a whole other ballgame. But regardless, have we learned to be free? Or are we these people who always believe that we have to have shackles around our ankles and our hands in order to do something, whether the right thing or the wrong thing?
I would even say that they even want to have shackles. Like when you give them the freedom.
It's Germinal that said this, people. I've got enough haters.
Yeah, I take full responsibility. No, I don't. No, my God, but honestly, I genuinely believe there's some people, they cannot handle freedom. So when they're in a state of freedom where like you're like, okay, do you? They don't know what to do. So they're deliberately seeking to be under some sort of domination because that's how they feel better about themselves. Because it makes absolutely no sense to call for more regulations. Look how hard it is to even open a beauty salon or a barbershop with all the regulations in place. For what?
Or a bakery in Senegal. And then you'll see them. Their normal attitude is going to be everything has to be regulated. The state needs to figure everything out, tell people who can open a bakery, who cannot, who gets to have where we do the flour thing. They expect their whole life to be, it's almost like at this time you can go to the bathroom. And at this time you have to go to bed. It's like, and then when you say, why do you need this? The excuse is always like, oh, it's not me who is going to be the problem. It's the other person. If we don't do these rules, the other person is going to do something.
Always, yeah. It has always been like this. And also I want to add, especially in French-speaking African countries, they are like, we inherit the French culture, and French people believe in the state. They love the state.
Yes, l'État c'est moi.
Thank you. L'État c'est moi. Absolutely, they love the state. And French and African French-speaking people crave the state. If you look at African French-speaking countries, they believe that the only way to elevate yourself in society is to get into public administration. That's what entrepreneurs are not. I don't want to use the word worship. Worship might be a little too strong. It's not the right word. Entrepreneurs are not appreciated. They're not valued. Thank you.
Yeah, and worse than that, they suspect you. Worse than that, they not only don't respect you, but you're suspicious.
Yeah,
yeah, suspicious.
Absolutely.
People,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
so go ahead, Virgil.
And back home, we're like, oh, in order to make it, you have to become secretary of whatever department. that's how your family's proud of you. I'm like, no, it's nonsense.
Well, that and it shows in so many ways when you see that so many francophone African nations are lagging behind. It shows a lot, and it's not so much. It's not only just because they have that mentality, but it's also because they very much have the legal framework
Yeah,
that supports such beliefs.
exactly.
Um, I always go back to the difference between civil law that we know
Hmm.
that many European nations are on
Hmm.
versus common law that the Anglophone sphere for the most part
Yeah,
is running on. Those two are very different softwares, and us in Francophone Africa, we're running with the worst of those software, which is the civil law
civil
software.
law. Yeah.
And but the problem is no one is really even paying attention to this. I was talking to this one minister of economy and finance, and the guy was saying to me, "My God, is there such another law than civil law?" I'm like, I almost fell out. I almost fell out. But you see how bad it is? And so when I
Right.
even hear some people who are like, and even when I hear some people like France dégage, Guy Marius Sagna, all of those people,
Yeah.
the Pan Africans from the left, and
Always.
they love to dump on France, and that's them. But to me, it's like let's be smart here. Let's be strategic. The one thing that bothers me the most about the French legacy, you know, put aside the whole history of what happened and everything, with the colonial times and all that. Of course, no one is going to sit here and say it was a good thing.
Mhm.
Absolutely not. But still, today we're left with things that no one is questioning.
Yeah.
Why? Why do any of these francophone African nations believe that they should stay with the rotten software that civil law is?
Thank you.
Why? But no one thinks about it. No one talks about it. They took it for granted. This is a colonial legacy that we took for granted. We don't even know it's a legacy of the colonial times, and we don't even know there's something else. There's another alternative, and we keep running on this crappy software. And look at us. We've got nothing to show for, nothing. So anyway, but so with that being said, Germinal, what's your so let me ask you two questions here. One is Germinal. Why do you think Africa is still the poorest region in the world? I love to ask this question to fellow Africans. Why do you think Africa is the poorest region in the world? And then my question will be to ask you, what do you suggest we do
Sure.
to no longer
So,
be the
why are we the poorest region in the world? So, Africans love to pride themselves in having all the natural resources, right? We have the richest land on earth, and but we're still poor. At the end of the day, natural resources don't mean anything if you don't transform them. And the way to transform them is to be producers. Africa is poor because we're not producers, we're consumers. Consumption equals poverty, production equals wealth. As I've always said, white people are not smarter than black people. White people are just strategic, and that's why they were able to maintain their domination over other civilizations for a very long time. Because white people are producers. Black people, especially Africans, have to embrace the production mentality. What the production mentality means? It means the willingness to of the is the willingness to embrace delayed gratification. You have to understand that whatever you do, you cannot reap the benefits of your effort right away. You have to wait, you have to be patient, you have to be disciplined, you have to be consistent. Africans have that problem. We're very distracted, we're very emotional. Senghor said, l'émotion est nègre. I have to say it in French. It resonates that way. Yeah, the emotion is black. The emotion is Negro because we are very carried by things that do not turn the needle in our favor. And when you're distracted, it's very easy to manipulate you. It's very easy to take you away from the things that do not pertain to do not pertain to the advancement of your condition. Africans have the brain to succeed. Unfortunately, we do not embrace the productive mentality, the producer's mentality. The Chinese have done that. China used to have a GDP that was inferior to so many African countries in the 1960s under Mao. It never proved that communism doesn't work. And look at China today. What has happened? Chinese people are not aliens. What has happened? Chinese people embrace the producer's mentality. They say, let's stop being consumers, let's becoming producers. The more you produce, the wealthier you become. And why do you become wealthy? Because you provide value to society. You provide value to the marketplace. So, so long as Africans will not embrace that, no matter, we can discuss all the things we want, colonization, this, honestly, we need to stop that colonization nonsense. It's, to me, colonization at this point is not the reason why we're poor. We need to stop that. It's nonsense. We're poor because we don't have a production or a producer's mentality.
I couldn't agree more. And to push a little bit further on the
Mm,
production thing, um, I would think that you agree that it's not just because we decide we're going to produce that we're going to produce. What does that production mentality, how does it need to translate? What are some of the tangible things that need to be
yeah,
put in place for that production to happen? That's what I would love for to go into, because then it's not just about saying, because I see them all over the continent. Every president, every minister, everybody's like, we need to industrialize. Yeah, they all say that. Yet I'm not seeing it happen. So what do you think is missing, Germinal, in order to industrialize? What else has to take place rather than just saying we need to industrialize?
sure. So what needs to happen is to shift our economic structure. What I mean by this is that we have what we call rentier economics, l'économie de la rente.
Yep.
So,
French speaking.
rentier
French.
economics is basically that it basically relies on three principles. The first is that we rely on a resource that is completely external to our production. For example, in Ivory Coast, we love to praise ourselves that, oh, we're the first producers of cocoa, as if we created cocoa. No, you guys are just lucky to be born to live in a place that has cocoa. That's it. So that's
That's
number
it.
one. Number two, um, in the rentier economic system, it does not depend on the domestic capacity of the people. So we all rely on that external resource, whether it's cocoa, coffee, that commodity. Number three, and more important, the primary beneficiary of that system is always the government. That's why it is not in the interest of the government to quote unquote industrialize its country. Because if we industrialize it, the government will be losing. When the government does its deal with other government or with multinational corporations, usually multinational corporations get like 70 to 80%, and then the 20% goes to the African government. And then it is within those 20% that the African government gets that he decides to redistribute to the people. When we look at Gabon, for example, Gabon, like the oil market in Gabon is pretty much controlled by French multinational corporations. And they own pretty much 70 to 80%. The other 20%, it's controlled by the Gabonese government, precisely the Bongo family. Thank God they're not in power anymore. And yet, you look at the Gabonese people, they are extremely poor. Why? Because the Gabonese government completely depleted the resources. So the rentier
Right.
economics is what is preventing Africa from developing. We need to start promoting our local champions. We don't
Yeah.
have enough local champions, in my opinion, in African societies.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's very true. And I guess for me, the best way I would sum up what you just said is, if we need to go from being consumers, mere consumers, to producers, because in production is where the money is, and where the value creation is, where the prosperity, that's the path to prosperity. Then we need to go from a rent-seeking economy, which some others could call a very regulated, over-regulated economy, to one where people are freed to
Mhm.
enterprise.
Yeah,
So for me, I sum it up in, we need greater economic freedom. So when you're
yeah,
talking about we need a different system, we need a different we need more economic freedom, because economic freedom allows for economic freedom, to me, is what is really the means of production. That's what really
yes,
truly the means of productions are. It's like, take out the regulations, allow entrepreneurs to enterprise, and then they will make things happen. So I agree with you. Germinal, let's move closer now. Moving from Africa back to the U.S. Um, and regarding policies,
Mhm.
what I'm sure you've been watching the elections. Kamala Harris versus
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, and also Donald Trump having announced that if he wins, Elon Musk is going to be in charge of reducing the size of a government, taking us to an efficient government.
Mhm.
Oh my God, that needs to happen all over the world. Efficient
Right.
governments need to happen all over the world. I think Singapore is one of the best ones for that, and
Yeah.
Dubai, I think, are doing a good job also. So, how do you think such a commission could improve government operations? And I think in your response, hopefully, many African leaders are going to take note. So, first of all, are you excited by something like that? Are you not? Where are you at with that?
No, I think if Donald Trump wins and he sticks to his promise, that would be good. Like, government needs to be reduced at the end of the day
Mm.
because uh, people always complain about the middle class shrinking. Uh, Life is expensive, but life is expensive. The middle class is shrinking, even disappearing because of government policy. Government policy is what creates inequality once again. So if we have a department that can actually cut costs to the way Javier Milei has been doing in Argentina, that would be awesome. I think, and that's where my contention is with Republicans. They are not willing to go as far as Javier Milei has done. Milei has been
Why do you think that is?
ruthlessly efficient. So sorry, Maga, what did you say?
Why do you think that is? Why do you
Well,
think the Republicans?
I think that Republicans donors have too much at stake, and that's one of the issues with lobbying because we our politics focus on special interest groups. So they're the one that make the biggest contributions and the contributions and investments. So they expect a return. So if they make a contribution, you better put policies in place that is going to favor the investment. Otherwise, they'll do whatever it takes to make life really hard for you. So, and that's what the issue is. It's because of lobbying. If Republicans can put lobbying aside and actually decide to focus on the common good and do things the right way, respect or beginning to be attached to Republican principles like reducing government, cutting taxes, and so on and so forth, we can get things done. So this department that Trump wants to create for Elon Musk is a good thing. I hope he's very serious about it because under his leadership, government spending kind of increased
That's grown.
it increased a bit, especially the national debt increased by $7.8 trillion. So I've not forgotten that. Like I'm like Trump, you talk about small government, but so far I don't know, man. I mean, I definitely prefer you over Democrats, that's for sure. But you need because economic policies matter. They're the foundation of everything, my God. Because if people love to talk about the social, but the social are not independent of market forces. For example, when you look at student loans, although it may not be an economic policy, it has economic underpinnings. At the end of the day, student loans like are the reason why college has become expensive. Because when you
Right.
subsidize it, it increases the cost of tuition. That's economics, supply and
Yeah.
demand. So
Without. Yeah.
so it perfectly so social issues are not independent of economic issues. So that's why I put the accent on the economics. The Republicans need to go the Milley way, but they're still holding back, and that's what bothers me about Republicans. Democrats, I would not even say anything because Democrats, Democrats,
No,
it's always about government spending. Let's make government bigger. There's nothing new with them. If it's
I
strictly up
hear
to
you.
them, we would be a communist country by now.
It's looking like it. For me, with Elon wanting to have a more efficient government, I am totally on board. But my worry there is exactly what you're talking about. It's the personal, the special interest. And as you know, as I know by now, a lot of, as you said, of our policies are very much influenced by special interests on both sides, and they're just pulling. It depends on who can pull harder. And I'm just worried that going into that situation is not going to be the same as going into the situation that Elon went into with Twitter. Twitter, where you had a set amount of people,
Hmm.
you could weed them out easily, right?
Yeah.
And yes, you had the advertisers retaliate and all of that, but you had a very set stake of stakeholders pushing against you. Where here, and this is why governments are so hard to fix once they go crazy,
Yeah.
unless you find a way to start anew somewhere. If government tries to mess with entrenched interest,
Hmm.
I'm not sure the entrenched interest will sit there and watch for you to destroy everything in their mind, to destroy everything for them.
Yeah.
And that's where my only reserve is. You don't handle government, and in this case, I'll go all the way even to the same way. It's just because there's so many fingers in it, fingers
Yeah.
that you sometimes don't even see, and you'll be surprised how, like, if he thought losing advertisers were a bad thing, and Twitter is barely, I don't even think Twitter is profitable yet. But imagine all these enemies that are going to be coming out of everywhere because you're touching pretty much everything, all of these special interests. So that's why, for me, what I'm more excited about, what I'm more hopeful about than Musk saying he's going to cut all of these things. It remains to be seen. Like, once he realizes all the people calling him up and being like, "You can't do this, you can't do that. I'm on the other end, and we're going to come after you," or whatever. Maybe he can, maybe he cannot. But what I'm most more hopeful about is the idea that Donald Trump has of creating these opportunity zones. Because for me,
Yeah.
the opportunity zones, by definition, they will work in my mind because there are places where, because these places they don't um, they don't threaten the status quo. Status quo is a powerful thing, and
Very.
doesn't mean that you can't go after the status quo. But these special opportunity zones, which in a way are the prosperous cities we're working on in Africa, is basically you carve out an area where there is nobody and nothing really going on, and there you kind of modify you have a clean slate. So no more entrenched interest, no more anything like that. It's a fair, clean, clear playing ground.
Yeah.
And then from there, new activity starts to happen. And if the people from the outside who are in the rotten world decide to come in and play here, but when they come, they have to play by these rules, which are better rules,
Hmm.
then fine. But if not, everybody's on their own side. So I have more hope on that than I have on, hey, we're gonna come in and we're gonna cut everything up. I'm like, maybe it's gonna be done, but I think there's gonna be a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
So
It's
Germinal,
definitely. Yeah. Go ahead,
yeah,
Magatte. Go ahead.
yeah. Going to our last question. So, what are some of the things that you're working on? If there is, and two questions there. If there are young people listening to us, young Africans who are interested in getting into the field of economics like you are, and also I would love to hear your advice for them, and then also would love to hear what it is that you've been working on recently.
Sure. So I must say that economics has changed my life for the better, as a matter of fact, because when you think as an economist, you start to have a better understanding of human nature. In fact, there are a lot of psychology in economics. Um, Charlie Munger said, "Show me the incentive, and I'll predict the outcome."
That's right.
And economics is all about people's incentives. When you understand what people's incentives are, you're not surprised by the results of their actions. So economics develops your analytical mind. When you start thinking like an economist, you start to think about every possible outcome. And it makes you think long term. So you compare the short term versus the long term. And honestly, like, the long term always win over the short term at the end of the day. Because the long term is about strategy, it's about wisdom, it's about
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. The short term
Mm-hmm.
is always emotional. It's always getting as fast as you can, but then it brings you back to square one again. So economics literally helped me become a better scholar, even a better human being. Like just thinking,
Yeah.
yeah, just my
Yeah.
ability to think economically makes me understand things around the world. It's because of economics I got even into finance. My God, I'm telling you, I used to despise finance. I used to hate business. I
I used to as well.
I could not stand finance, business. I could not stand it until I got into economics, until I started to understand capitalism and its beauty and how it frees people. That's how it makes sense. So I will tell youngsters if they want to learn economics specifically, to learn it on their own, not to go to school for it. And the reason why is because if they go, they're gonna turn Keynesians. They're gonna turn
Which is
Keynesians.
still
Like
not
they
as bad as which is still as bad as Marxism, but still not good.
right, like because the thing like that is that when you study economics in school, what they do is that they turn you into a useful idiot. What I mean by that is that they turn you into this mathematician or statistician who is extremely good at doing quantitative analysis, but you have no idea what theory you're testing. So economists today, like they don't understand the history of economic system. They don't take the time to understand the theories behind the policies that are being put in place. They just give them a huge pile of data, analyze it, run the regressions you want to run. I actually know how to run regressions. I know how to do econometrics. But what's the point of doing that without understanding the history, without understanding the theory? And as I said, economics today is not taught from a free market perspective, unfortunately, in school. So for anyone who wants to really learn about economics seriously, learn it on your own. Read about the Austrian school, read about Milton Friedman, read about entrepreneurship. That's how you learn economics. When you know how to read financial statements, income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statements, you understand
Yeah,
things.
that's right. That's very true. Germinal, where can people, you know, continue following you at? And I think if they want to learn economics, they need to learn. They need to read your books. They need to
Yes,
follow you.
they do.
They need to
Yes.
hear you. So, where can we find you? Do you have a website, social media handles,
Yes.
podcast? Or
Um, so people can follow me on Instagram. That's the social media I'm the most active on.
okay.
So Instagram, also LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and Facebook, but
Hmm.
especially Instagram. And I didn't forget your question. You asked me about the project I'm working on.
Yes.
So far, I've not started working personally on a project because with my publishing company, I've dedicated my time to fulfill the needs of my clients. You know, clients come first. I'm a businessman now, so I have to put my personal stuff aside and prioritize the needs of my clients. But there's a book that I want to work on is the history of it's basically the history of wealth distribution in the Western world. I did one for the US, which was a massive undertaking. Now I want to do it for the Western world. Because when you see people like Thomas Piketty writing 1,000 pages of nonsense, full of graphs, like, no, literally, like you see the book for someone who is not sharp in economics is going to get intimidated by it because of the
Yeah.
volume. But when you understand what's going, you're like, my guy, what you writing is gibberish, bro.
No, no. Do not get me started. Don't get me started on Piketty. Do not get me started on Piketty. Do not get me started on him. So
So
that's great. I look forward.
yeah, so I definitely want to write a book about like the history of wealth distribution in the Western world because wealth distribution is something that I've been specializing myself in because I really want people to not only understand but accept that it is fair. Capitalism is the fairest system to ever exist. You are paid according to what you produce. Therefore, inequality is your lot. Simple
That's
as
right.
that.
That's really great. And your Instagram handle, what is it? And we'll also put it in the screen for people. But what is your Instagram handle, Germinal?
Germinal G van.
Germinal G Van.
Yeah,
Perfect. You
Germinal
guys
G
all
van. Yeah, that's my Instagram. And then my Facebook is the same, Germinal G van. LinkedIn, same, Germinal G van. Yeah. And
We'll share it.
anyone can, anyone, for those who want to read my books, they're available on Amazon and also on the GGV publishing website.
Perfect. And we'll make sure that we provide people with all of those links. Well,
Thank you,
Germinal,
Jay.
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with
Thank you.
you. You have so much to say, and we only barely even scratched the surface. So it means we'll have to continue the conversation, another time. So more to come with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was a true honor to be on your platform, Margaret. Thank you for the opportunity. I couldn't
Thank you.
I could be more grateful. God bless you. Thank you.
Well, likewise. Thank you so much. To our listeners, thank you for joining us on the Magatte Wade Show. And don't forget to subscribe for more enlightening conversations. Until next time, let's continue to explore ideas that inspire, change, and promote prosperity for Africa.